Hello, and welcome back to Witch on the Holy Night. My name is Maybe Dennis, and last time we had such an epic episode with Sojiro and Aoko against Flat Snark. And it eventually boiled down to Aoko firing a beam that was so strong that it crushed this giant ice meteor and the moon. And Sojiro, jumping off of a roller coaster, hanging onto the egg that was chasing him, and landing on the ground in order to protect Aoko from the automaton that was still alive for some reason. But after the fight, they made up, but it seems like Aoko had the wrong idea, punched Sojiro in the face because she's a tsundere, and somehow kidnapped him in a bottle. So I'm very curious about what's going to happen next, because Sojiro is still a normal person who knows the secrets. What are they going to do with him? But yeah, we're going to head into the next episode. And the next episode, Chapter 6, is called Like a Dog. Oh, I'm feeling so bad for my boy. Chapter 6, Like a Dog. He was still in a deep sleep. It all seemed ablaze in a mad fiery red. Unbearable idle thoughts. Incessant obstinacy. Melancholy sights and gloomy bittersweet talk. Fickle wickedness born of human interaction. Namely, the voice of a forsaken coexistence. This, however, was the scenery of a world far removed from that. If there are those praying this was a paradise, then there are also likely those lamenting it as the underworld. In a decade, or perhaps longer, this would all change, but for now, the autumn leaves remained yet untrampled by human souls. Wait, okay, I wasn't sure if that was the right souls, but I guess it is because it means feet. It was scenery he knew well. Life in the mountains was humble and modest. There were no conspicuous buildings amongst this wilderness he called home. They gathered and stockpiled only what they needed to survive, without pillaging the land. Serpentine trails could be seen woven through the fields, and the stone steps leading to the summit were obscured by the forest, only visible once upon them. The mountain inhabitants probably intended it that way. There was no signs of mankind's exploitations among the mountain landscape. He suddenly remembered that this was the season he liked the most. Or rather, it suited him the most. There was much to be done to prepare for the winter, but whenever he had a free moment, he would make his way towards the mountain top. Gazing idly at the setting sun while breathing deep the crisp autumn air was probably the second favorite of his daily joys. It relaxed him, the cold but comforting wind at dusk, and the way the sunset dyed the peaks with a vibrant crimson. Not 2 months had passed since coming down from the mountains, and it had already pained him that the memories had begun to fade. Someone once told him that memories fade every day, so the best you do is make as many new ones as possible. I'm gonna cut this out. It took me at least 7 tries to read that because I think there's a typo there, but I'm not sure what it is. So the best you can do. Oh, there's so many typos. Recollections grew hazy. A new place to live meant the beginning of a new life. He wasn't sure if he was reluctant to let go of the scenery he had cherished for so long, or if he'd merely been spoiled by it. Despite his new home in the city surrounded by tall buildings, he felt guilty for wanting these memories alone to remain clear in his mind. Either way, he had to make the best of a fresh start. What kind of man thinks more about where he came from than where he's going, he contemplated. It's a dream. He tried to stop himself from indulging in uncharacteristic sentimentality. It wouldn't be a dream if it was easy to understand. The moment he realized he was dreaming, angular shadows began to rise from the autumn colors. They were concrete buildings, previously unknown and yet familiar to him at the same time. This was how his current life was, washing away his memories. Struggling as he might, there was no stopping the degradation of human memory or impressions. It was merely a fact of life. By nature, humans lived in the present over the past. Eventually, even his most cherished memories would be swallowed up by the buildings. It was neither cruel nor heartless. If they were sure to disappear, then for now, he would content himself with dreaming about the memories he could clearly recall. Whether in the mountains or the city, the days flew by. Yesterday's scenery was not the same as today's. And such, Aoko rose and overtook all of his memories. She had given him no time to grieve. Distant nostalgia was beautiful, but that made it fleeting. What's a Miyagi Nudo? A faint dizziness made him close his eyes. Without sight, the mountain landscape vanished, but in its place, a familiar voice can be heard. It was a booming voice that seemed to shake not only the mountains he stood upon, but the entire mountain as well. She's just standing there, menacingly. And of course, Aoko Aozaki reappeared, towering in the distance. He must have been tired, he thought, diagnosing himself while trying to make out what she was saying. Fearing the vertigo would return if he reopened his eyes, he decided to keep them closed. It sounded like she was arguing with someone, though the tone was all he could make out. It wasn't violent, but certainly aggressive. Oh right, his soul's in the bottle, so she would appear massive to him. Maybe she was picking a fight with another mountain across the way. He wouldn't put it past her, and she would win that argument. After all, she was a troublemaker who blew up the moon. He couldn't quite grasp the situation. Though somehow, vaguely, he had the sense that his human rights were being largely ignored. It was deeply unsettling, even for a dream. After several minutes, it seemed that the high-impact argument ended in Aoko's victory. I knew it. She won that argument with the other mountain. Then suddenly, the boisterous voice faded. Praying everything would be back to normal, he opened his eyes. Oh, back at the park. He took a deep, slow breath. The scenery was a far cry from the nostalgic dreamscape he had just left, albeit not unpleasant either. Without a doubt, it was the amusement park. To him, his was his freshest memory. He recalled the house of mirrors that Aoko Aozaki destroyed. The park was a flawless replica of reality, but he was the only one there. Without having to worry about anyone chasing him, he sat down on the wreckage of Kitty's rides and looked up at the moon that should have been shot down. The winter moon shone white like a jewel. It was layered over the figure of a girl who tried to kill him. If a mage was a witch, then she definitely fit the bill. I don't mind being killed. Such an absurd thing to say, but it spilled out of him so naturally. That had nothing to do with witches or magecraft. There was an echo in the gaps of his heart. If she had not spoken those words, then he would not have responded as he did. In that moment, what had Aoko Aozaki said to him? As he tried to remember, his deep slumber drew to an end. And with it, his chance to find the answers he so wished he could find. Oh, we're in the manor? The mansion? The Kuonji mansion? Then, Sojiro woke up in an unfamiliar room, gasping. Not because the plush mattress he was on was softer than his apartment's cheap futon, or because everything from the carpet to the wallpaper looked expensive. Yeah, I associate this song with the Kuonji mansion. Oh, she's right there. Bewildered, he tried to catch his breath. She was the cause of his surprise. The moment Sojiro's eyes snapped open, there she was, the girl dressed in black, sitting at his bedside. The silence was deafening. Still supine to the bed, I think that's how you pronounce it, Sojiro gazed at her. His impulse was to sit up, but he refrained, thinking it might be rude to be it staring at the person sitting next to him. Is it to be it staring or just to be staring? She was just sitting there on a chair, dressed in black, modest clothes. Still, she projected an air that was anything but plain. Her monochrome outfit evoked indescribable elegance. Like a costume handmade just for her, from the finest fabrics. It was enough to inspire poetic sentiments, even in Sojiro. The girl continued to sit, completely motionless. Without realizing it, Sojiro had stopped breathing. No, you need to breathe to live! Genuine astonishment had him captivated. Such beauty. It was the first time he had ever thought to use such a simple, plain expression to describe another human being. She was a daffodil, in perfect bloom, or the ideal female form, seen only in dreams. This quality was something to be cherished and admired in her. It was different from Raoko Aozaki's radiant vitality. After all, the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. It's just that whenever Sojiro comments on Aozaki's looks, I just remember him being like, "Oh my god, the automaton was terrifying looking. Did you see her face? It was so scary." And Aoko's just like, yeah, continue. As she like cocks her bullet gun things. And there was no way this girl would be allowed such a happy ending. Her life was a solitary fable of someone who left the world in exactly the same way they entered it. With her humanity stolen at birth, hers was an existence not of this world. The more beautiful something was, the more tragic its fate. Growing up in the mountains, this was not something Sojiro was taught, but something he learned from experience. Sojiro turned his head as though he was being lured in. He knew it was rude to stare, but he couldn't fight his instincts. Then... Hello. This time, his heart actually skipped a beat. She was not asleep at all. Expressionless, she was merely watching over him while he recovered. Sojiro froze, unable to turn his head away or think of something clever to say. It was like staring into her eyes turned him to stone. I'm excited about this, because I wanted to see their reaction together. They've never spoken to one another. Perhaps because of her delicate features, she looked somewhat younger than him. On the other hand, her tranquil expression made him feel like she was older. Jet black hair, just to her shoulders. Her large eyes were set like onyx stones, matching her hair. Devoid of emotion, her gaze stayed fixed on Sojiro. Even after their eyes met, she did not turn away. He wanted to speak, but he could not find the words. It was not unlike a frog being stared down by a snake. Nevertheless, he just could not bring himself to say something. Additionally, she just stares back at him, with no words to say. No matter how carefree Sojiro might have been, he was painfully aware that this girl was as powerful as Aoko. Oh, you're so wrong. She's like much stronger. Less talkative, to be sure, but still powerful. Objectively, the scene was not unlike that of someone nursing a bedridden stranger. He had no idea what she might have been thinking about, but it seemed to him this harsh silence might last forever. All I could say for sure was that the quiet did not appear to bother her in the slightest. It was like some bizarre form of punishment. Damn it, I hope it's not about common sense, because that's not very common for me. He thought, keeping his eyes on the girl. He felt the moment he turned his head or blinked, she might stab him in the chest with a hidden blade. And not because of his imagination was running away with him. Of course not. In the stifling silence, it was only natural that Sojiro would think back on what had happened in the amusement park, and it made him uneasy. But stronger than any anxiety was his fascination with the girl. Her slender frame and milky white skin, the chill of her guarded stare, the warmth of her lingering femininity. It was a mixture of those two latter qualities that was almost magical. He stared at her for so long, he began to get the feeling that they had met somewhere before. Sometime before the conflict at Kitsyland, when he was delivering food to her in a cat suit. I'm still waiting for a follow-up for that. He could not quite put his finger on it, but he was sure that he had seen her previously. His voice shattered the frozen silence in the room. He almost felt sorry for making the noise as he spoke out to her. But they could not very well just sit there and stare at each other forever. though he might have been the only one thinking that they were staring, and perhaps she thought they were glaring at each other.
ここはどこで、君は誰だかわかるかな?
She narrowed her eyes slightly, though apparently not out of offense. There was no response. Just as he was thinking it would have been better to keep quiet, she quietly raised her hand.
これ、あなたのでしょ?
Did you drop something? Her voice was cold, but melodic. A white piece of cloth was wrapped around her finger. Oh, his bandage. There was no need to tell him what it was. He was conscious enough to recognize his own possessions. Sojiro sat speechless as she tossed it to him. Picking it up, he wrapped it around his neck. Okay, now I have to go back to see if he actually had it before. Actually, no, I don't think we saw Sojiro at all during this cutscene because everything was in his point of view. Oh. Ah, wow. Okay, so I'm still curious. Because, like, that was the first thing that Alice talked about when she saw him. What could it be? I'm still thinking it's gotta be something magic related. Sojiro sat speechlessly as she tossed it to him. Picking it up, he wrapped it around his neck.
青子はそれを知っているの?
No, I don't think it's magic. It might be scars for something. He looked away in response to her blunt question, distracted by something unrelated. She called Aoko Aozaki by her given name, which led him to believe that the mountain Aoko had argued with within his dream was actually the girl beside him.
So, どうだろう?
As sincerely as he could, he answered without presumption. There are things that should be known, and things that needed not to be. There are also things that should be told, and other things that must not be. Sojiro was not exactly sure what that she was referring to. However,
でも、その方がいいとは思うよ。
he smiled slightly at her question. Perhaps, impressed by his response, the overwhelming pressure in the room dissipated noticeably. Or maybe she had been more nervous than he was the entire time, projecting the image that his room was her domain a tad too strongly. The tension faded. Sojiro tried to sit up and prop his arms beneath him. Now that they were talking, it seemed awkward to stay lying down. However, his body felt strange as he tried to move, and it surprised him how difficult it was to sit up. It took everything he had just to raise his upper body to a sitting position.
あれ、洋服のままだ。
I ain't cleaning that for you. As he threw the covers back, he tilted his head quizzically.
申し訳ない。こんないい布団なのに、これじゃ不釣り合いだ。というよりもったいない。
She stared at him, not expecting him to complain about not wearing pajamas while sleeping. Somehow, it appeared that he had done something to surprise her.
なんでだ。何もしてないぞ、俺。
Pouting a bit at the unwarranted curiosity, he turned to face her. Although he was still mostly laying down, it was at least a more dignified position.
それで、さっきの続きだけど。
Music change. Indeed, he needed to find out where he was and who she was before anything else. Okay, it took almost 20 minutes to finally, for him to wake up and talk to Alice, and now we're finally getting to the point. Actually, the more he thought about what happened at the amusement park, the more he got a sinking feeling in his stomach. Perhaps finally getting through to her, she calmly moved her arm from behind her back when... Oh, that's Aoko. Once again, they silently locked eyes. Thump, thump, thump. There was a startling sound of rapidly approaching footsteps. They both had a pretty good idea of who it was.
Alice, 約束!
Just as expected, Aoko Aozaki burst through the door with a thunderous roar. She entered wearing her school uniform, her long hair flowing behind her. Her breathing was heavy, and her forehead was wrinkled by a scowl, granting her a demonic appearance.
Alice!
The girl named Alice scowled slightly in response. She may have even let a sigh of disappointment slip out.
早かったわね、青子。
Her calm voice was a polar opposite of Aoko's. Needless to say, her voice dripped with a brazen coldness.
そりゃあんたの性格は知り抜いてるからね。こういう時の短絡思考はこの2年で経験済みよ。お行儀がいいようで面倒になったらあっさり投げ捨てるのがあんたでしょ。
いやね、人聞きの悪い。
So scandalous. Effortlessly, she brushed aside Aoko's jab. In doing so, Sojiro had the distinct impression that she no longer even realized he was in the room.
はっ、それで今日まで何度煮え湯を飲まされたことか。青子に譲ると言ったけど、よく考えると面倒だから私の方で処理しておいたわ。なんて言い訳、もう聞き飽きたっつーの。短気なのはそっちの自由だけど、それなら後の始末は相方に任せるのが最低限の筋ってもんじゃないの？
To be fair, you were gonna let him go, at least for the day.
そうね。そうでなければ共闘している意味がないわ。まあ、今後の方針を勝手に決めた人のセリフじゃないとは思うけど。
それもきっちり型をつけたでしょ？いい？勝ったのは私たちよ。逃げ切れば見逃してあげるって言ったのは誰？言動には責任を持ちなさい、アリス。
Oh god, how close was Sojiro to dying just now?
それとも何？もしかして一番気に食わないのはそのあたりの理由なわけ？
Dogs! Dogs! Alice frowned slightly and fell silent. Her housemate seemed to have struck a nerve that Alice herself did not know was there.
とにかくこいつの扱いはちゃんと目が覚めて本人の意思でどうするか決めるまで保留ってことで合意したでしょ。人の留守中に出し抜くのはやめてよね。
それ、青子、学校はどうしたの？まだ正午になったばかりなの。
Oh Sojiro's gonna be like, oh snap, it's noon, I should be in school.
アリスのとこが今日で終わりって思い出して家庭の事情ってことで早退したのよ。期末試験前だってのにほんと何やってんのか。
Aoko grumbled, more to herself than anyone else in the room. Then she locked eyes with Alice. Or more accurately, they glared daggers at each other. The room had become tense once again, and it felt like a fight could break out at any moment, with no way to escape. Sojiro had no choice but to sit and watch. But then, the electric silence that seemed like it would last forever suddenly broke about a minute later. Apparently, this sort of clash was an everyday occurrence.
私は今に言っているから。彼に事情を説明してあげて。
Alice stood up from the chair and made for the door. Watching her go, Sojiro cocked his head. In her hand was what could only be described as...
果物ナイフ。
Oh no. He had no other words to describe the tool that she was clutching. It's weird because there are no fruits in here.
アリス、あえて聞くけど、その手に持ってるの何？
Aoko asked Alice as she walked past.
探検ね。どう見ても。
Alice answered expressionlessly before briskly walking out of the room. Sojiro was this close to dying once more, for the 17th time in the last 24 hours. Sojiro thought it best not to think too deeply about the scene he had just witnessed. Man, he's playing with fire. At any rate, the girl in black had withdrawn, and along with her, the feeling of tension. Leaving a bedridden Sojiro alone with an Aoko still dressed for school. From Sojiro's perspective, this was a perfect chance to get answers to his ever-growing list of questions.
わけのわからないことだらけだ、青崎。
Man, I went through everything last
で
night.
しょうね。順序立てて説明してあげるからちょっと黙ってて。
After everything I went to last night, I don't even know what knocked me out. I I think it was the exhaustion, but there's a pain in my jaw. Facial paralysis. She nodded, satisfied, as she took a seat.
どう調子は
なんかだるい。
I kind of like this face. He's just like, aww. He answered meekly, dropping his shoulders. He opened and closed his left hand a few times, but moving his fingers felt slow and awkward. It was clear that he was still in bad shape. Meanwhile, Aoko was blinking her eyes in wonder. Or was it admiration? Between Alice and Aoko, Sojiro did not know which of the girls was harder to read.
体が重いのは当然よ。丸2日経ってるし、寝てるだけでも体は弱ってるだろうし。
2 days straight, I missed so many lessons and I was already behind.
でも、もう話せるくらい回復してるとは思わなかった。あんたって見かけより頑丈にできてるのね。
Yeah, I punched you really hard. Wait, what?
2日って？
あれからそれだけ経ってるの。学校には欠席届出しといたから、その点は安心して。
What was the reason?
ガンドの呪いもダンプティの呪いも、私とアリスとで解除しといたから。
Wait. But what about my work? What about my rent? No, I don't have enough money now. Sojiro nodded at the word curse, as if recalling it suddenly. It was all coming back to him now.
どうかした？そんな遠い目しちゃって。
I don't have money for rent now.
ああ、忘れてた。それで2日も寝込んでたのか。怖いもんだな、呪われるってことは。
ほんと緊張感ないわね、あんた。ローのように眠ってたのが嘘みたいよ。下手すると一生あのまま石膏もどきだったかもしれないのに。
You're right, and we shouldn't waste vegetables.
ちょっと待った。今すごいこと言わなかったか？
言ったけど、聞かぬが花よ。経緯はどうあれ、後でアリスにお礼を言っときなさい。私じゃ解除できなかったんだから。
Aw, Alice helped, even though she was probably gonna kill us soon.
ひどい花もあったもんだ。
Bliss is overrated.
けど、アリスっていうのはさっきの子か？遊園地で、俺たちを殺そうとした？
I still don't know what she did by putting him in the bottle. Was that to make him subservient somehow? Like by trapping his soul? I really don't know. Aoko replied that it was.
彼女、ずっとそこに座ってたけど、ここは彼女の部屋なのか？
Sojiro scanned the room again. He was not accustomed to sleeping on anything other than a futon, and the room looked especially foreign to him.
ここはただの客室。長いこと使ってなかったから埃だらけでしょ。それより、アリスと何か話したの？あなた。
Define talk.
いや、あれを会話というのはちょっと。
He brought his hand to his mouth and recalled the few words they had exchanged. As Sojiro said, calling it a conversation would be a gross overstatement. And yet, thinking back on it, it seemed like they had talked for hours, which brought an uncomfortable smile to his face.
とはいえ、緊張は解けたと思うよ。青崎がやってくるのがもう少し遅かったらよかったのに。
We don't need you here, Aoko. Aoko narrowed her eyes at his innocent slip of the tongue. She knew that Sojiro did not mean to treat her like a nuisance, but nevertheless, she found it hard to take the full brunt of the words that said to her face. Even worse, she sensed that she was getting used to his manner of speaking.
でも、だからなのかもね。相変わらず首の皮一枚の人生を送ってるわ、あなたって。
He tilted his head, clearly confused.
だから、あんたはよっぽどアリス好みの対応をしたのよ。まだ生きてるってそういうこと。
She treated him for 2 days just to hear a few words from his mouth to see if he could prove whether or not he was worthy to live. No matter how hard he tried, he could not grasp what she was getting at. He decided to change the subject to something else.
ところで、ここはどこなんだ？あの子に聞いても教えてくれなかったけど、青崎なら教えてくれるだろ。
ここは三崎町の幽霊屋敷よ。正確には久遠寺邸と言えばいいかしらね。さっきの子、久遠寺アリスの持ち家で私が住んでるところでもある。あの後あなたをここまで持ってきたんだけど覚えてないでしょ？
No, I do not. Only this pain in my left cheek. Something about the way she said that made him feel uncomfortable.
久遠寺っていう名前は聞き覚えがあるような。そうだ、よく商店街でおじさんたちが話してた。なんでも偉いお金持ちだとかなんとか。
それアリスの前ではご法度よ。穏便にここで暮らしたいならね。
Wait, live here? Confused yet again, Sojiro tilted his head for what seemed like the 100th time that day. And once again, he had heard something to make him feel uneasy.
青崎、君今なんて言った？
しずきくん、私ね、あからさまな嘘を言う人と同じことを何度も言わせる人と差しの悪い人には容赦しないから。
It's such a nice smile, but that's a smile that she gives when she's about to punch you in the face.
そのあたり覚えておいてね。ここで平穏に暮らしたいなら。
With her best smile, Aoko made her threatening proclamation. Needless to say, it caught Sojiro completely off guard.
気のせいならいいんだけど、君の言葉には俺がここに住むような響きが感じられる。
He shot her an honest stare of disapproval. It was the best resistance he could muster. The only weapon he had left, but it was not in the slightest effective against Aoko's overpowering, ruthless glare.
あなた、自分の立場を分かってる？
He considered her words very carefully. He wanted to openly express his feelings on the matter, but instead, he swallowed his words and shook his head. Despite his typical inability to read people's emotions, he at least seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. It appeared that he had finally realized that it was his carefree mood that typically got on Aoko's nerves. Every time.
そうだった。あんたに回りくどいこと言っても無駄だったのよね。いいわ。考える時間ぐらいあげたかったけど、時間もないし、はっきりと言ってあげる。
You are our dog now.
いい？しずきくん。この度、あなたは私たちの監視下に置かれることになりました。しばらくはここで一緒に暮らしてもらいます。
Okay. I think I mentioned this before as like a possibility of what they could do with him. I'm glad it panned out, but like they'll have to keep him under like severe supervision in order to make sure he doesn't say anything. At least if it were a normal person. Sojiro would probably listen to Aoko.
もちろん、生殺与奪の権利はこちらにあるという条件で。
Why did you need the bottle? He was already knocked out.
No.
The blatant tyranny in her voice caused him to sputter. Oh my god, that face. He wished that she would stop smiling in an attempt to make it seem any less outrageous.
一緒に住むって青崎とか？
It was not the faint expectation of living under the same roof with Aoko that made him flustered. Rather, he was genuinely concerned about his own safety. Fair, regardless of how good-natured he was, it seemed he'd finally come to the gripes with the fact that he just escaped death.
とんでもない。冬眠前の熊と一緒に暖を取るようなもんだ。
Oh no, he just called her a bear. Aoko agreed, as blunt as a comparison as it was.
たまには的確な比喩をするじゃない。
Oh, she's not denying it. She's like, I could kill you whenever I want.
あなたの言う通り、下手なことをしたり決まりを破ったりしたら、今度こそ息の根止めるからね。それと、ここに住んでるのは私とアリスの2人だけよ。
I love her expression so much.
あの子、私なんかより数倍常識ないから、気をつけないと死んじゃうぞ。
That means Sojiro has more in common with Alice because they have less common sense. Oh no, my boy's dead. Aoko was 100% serious. It It was her sincerity that made it all the more believable.
いやいやいやいや
Obviously, there was no way the victim, Sojiro, could accept these terms.
待ってくれ俺にはちっとも青崎がわからない監視するって言うけどなんでそんな話になってるんだ考えられる範囲悪いこととかしてないしそもそも俺を見張っても得なことなんて一個もないし青崎はいろいろ間違ってるいやそれとも魔術師っていうのはみんな青崎みたいなのか
As hard as it is to say, Aozaki's probably one of the more lenient ones just because she actually let you live. Arrogant and selfish were the words that the harmless boy's gaze seemed to imply. Alko felt a headache coming on. Due to his innate easygoing persona, Sojiro had not thought to question that Alko being a mage was out of the ordinary.
だからあんたがそういう風に誰はばかることなく私たちのことを言いふらさないかを見張ってんじゃないこの常識なし
I told Tobimaru, by the way. You did what? Alko flew out of her chair. She had been doing her best to keep her cool, but seemed like her well of patience had finally run dry. Witnessing Alko snap, Sojiro clasped his hands together.
そうか青崎が俺を殺そうとしたのは魔術師であることを隠さなくちゃいけないからだったっけうんそれならわかる監視するのは青崎の秘密のことで俺の命云々はおまけみたいなものか
You get it.
そりゃ本質的に言えばそうだけど身も蓋もないわねそんな言い方
She's so disappointed.
けどそれはあまり意味がないんじゃないか学校もあるしバイトだってあるんだ一日中この家から出ないわけにはいかないんだぞ
Maybe he doesn't have to pay rent now. So he'll only need to pay for his own food. Or maybe they'll pay for that too, so he wouldn't have, so he doesn't have to go to work anymore. In an instant, Sojiro's objectivity had her stumped, leaving her at a loss for words. He honestly had no idea what position he was in. To believe that he had any sort of freedom at this point was shocking, to say the least.
いや落ち着け私
Just breathe.
話が早くなって夜も経つ
Alko somehow managed to compose herself. As a matter of fact, she never had any intention of imprisoning him. Stripping him of his freedom and incarcerating him would go against her agreement anyways. Or their agreement anyway. Besides, if she was going to go that far, it would be easier to just kill him. To Alko, letting him live meant showing a modicum of respect to Sojiro's way of life.
もしかしてこの部屋から出ちゃいけないのか俺
He's thinking it's even worse. No. A light bulb went on in his head as he blurted out what he was thinking. It appeared he had finally got the grim message. Alko looked somewhat satisfied at his dismay.
大丈夫よ監禁生活なんて面倒なことだけはしないからあなたの自由はそれなりに考慮してありますそのあたりのさじ加減はアリスの手腕に任せてあるからあなたは心配しなくていいわ
A gloomy look fell over Sojiro's face as he found his concern growing by the second.
いいあなたの処遇はこの家に住むことを前提にした監視でそれも解決策が見つかるまでの期間限定何でもいいから目撃者を殺すなんてことよりこっちの方がよっぽど穏便でしょだいたいこれは私とあなたとの約束なんだからいちいち文句言わないでよねただでさえアリスとの冷戦が続いてて頭痛いんだから
She sighed as she stared Sojiro down as he laid on the bed.
けど勘違いはしないでここじゃあんたの地位は最下層のさらに下
Oh no.
番犬より下なんだからあんたの生殺与奪はあの夜から私が握ってるんだからあんたは私に所有されてるようなもんなの
Dogs don't have to pay for rent, right? They only pay with love and affection. Please feed me.
さこれで自分の立場分かった
As Alice finished her declaration. Wait, Alice? Or is this supposed to be Aoko? Oh, there are so many typos here. Oh my god. As Aoko finished her declaration, Sojiro subtly looked up at the ceiling so she would not notice his reaction. He meant no offense to Aoko, but he had to hide the fact that he fundamentally disagreed with her analogy. In Sojiro's opinion, it was it was disrespectful to both dogs and humans to call him lower than a dog. A more accurate analogy of their power dynamic would be that of a rabbit and a wild boar, hence why he chose not to voice his opinion. Aw, did you see his face in the corner? Let me see it again. Look at that. Look at his smug face like, you don't... Come on, man. No. I know what I'm worth. You don't have to tell me. Unlike his apartment, the ceiling here was decorated with ornate patterns. Putting aside how you would be treated here, in terms of lodging, it was a definite upgrade. Maybe it would not be all that bad. Sojiro nodded slowly, as if to persuade himself. And...
とりあえず命は助けてあげるから。
This is what she had told him, not 2 days ago.
あまり納得したくないけど、自分の立場は分かったよ。確かにそんな約束だった。いろいろと言いたいことはあるけど、それは認めるしかない。だけど、君たちと一緒に住めっていうのは本気なのか？青崎は細かいことは気にしないとしても、さっきの子は嫌がりそうだし。
At that point, he zipped his lips. Ako's eyes were tinged with bloodlust.
あら、しずきくんはご不満？
Oh no! Her contrived smile, so obviously forced, struck despair into Sojiro's heart. Come to think of it, he vaguely recalled her warning to him to not make her repeat herself. Furthermore, as a practical matter, Sojiro Shizuki's life was now in the hands of Aoko Aozaki. It'd be unwise to anger her further, he told himself as if speaking to a third person.
いや、別に。だってそれ以外ないんだろ。
You can live, you just no longer have human rights. None, Aoko said with a firm nod of her head. Sojiro slumped his shoulders in surrender.
青崎の言い分は分かった。ただ、一応聞いておきたいんだけど、俺の人権はどこに行ってしまったんだろう。
Did you hear what I just said? None whatsoever.
バカね。そんな形のないものが初めからあるわけないでしょ。つまんないこと言わないよ。
That was even better. Oh, poor little Suzuki. You never had any in the first place. Now stop wasting my time with your stupid little questions. Sojiro reflected upon her answer, now feeling like his question was, indeed, stupid. He should have already known the answer before he asked.
ああ、だと思った。そんな気はしてたんだ。目が覚める前から。
ん？
Sorry, I just remembered his vision of Aoko being a mountain and just arguing with other mountains and winning. His muttering provoked a dubious stare from Aoko before she quickly retracted it. If she questioned every little thing he said, they'd be up there up until sundown.
とにかく納得いったみたいね。じゃあ次、いよいよ本題。今に移動するわよ。説明しなくちゃいけないことが山ほどあるんだから。
Time for exposition.
で、一人で立てる？
さっきから手を動かしてたから血は巡ってる。歩くぐらいならいけそうだ。
そう、なら問題ないわね。
I was kind of hoping he'd get up and just like onto the ground. Everybody do the flop. With that, she turned her back and walked away from him. He had seen this bold form of hers many times before. Like the day he met her for the first time. Instantly, the memories flashed back to him like lightning.
そうだった。青崎はこういうやつだった。
Without knowing it, he cracked a smile. He was so lost that he did not know his left from his right, but recalling this alone was enough to calm him. The Aoko he knew was different from the one in the House of Mirrors. She was not that brooding girl he saw over there. He felt a pang of nostalgia. The Aoko he knew was brisk in movement and unfaltering in gaze, just like this one. She was the same one as when he first met her, moody yet overflowing with confidence, in her element.
ほら、急いだ急いだ。
Chop chop.
アリスがさっきから居間でお待ちかねよ。
She was already outside the door, standing in the chilly corridor.
寝たきりの辛さを知らないだろう、青崎は。
No, I don't. That's what my magic circuits are for. Grunting and groaning, Sojiro eventually got to his feet. His body, heavy and stiff while he was lying down, cried out in pain as he tried to stand and walk. Every step sent shooting pains through his bones. Despite this, he had a calm face and made his way towards Aoko. Typically, he was quick to not pay any mind to life's little struggles, but these pains, he needed to force himself to consciously ignore them. In other words, he was displaying false bravado, an uncharacteristic reaction for someone who never suppressed their true feelings.
驚いた。あんた本当にタフね。
It really hurts. I really want to cry.
ありがとう。けど心は弱いんだ。
Oh, that's deep, man.
そう。参考までに心に留めておくわ。できるだけ優しく扱えるようにね。
Naturally, her voice was devoid of any true empathy. She turned away from the once more dejected Sojiro and began walking briskly down the corridor. And just then, she stopped, feet snapped together, as though something had popped into her head. And just as if she was remembering something that she had forgotten in a completely trivial way.
それじゃあ行くわよ。ついてきて、宗十郎。
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, I think that's the first time she called him Sojiro, because she usually calls him Shizuki. She gallantly turned back the way she was heading, the words sounding so natural as she spoke them. Ako did not see the look in Sojiro's eyes as he heard her words. For though she worked in the arcane, the spell that Ako had woven was apparent to everyone but her. After blinking his eyes as if blinded by something, Sojiro casually nodded and followed behind her. The sheer size of the interior was daunting. The 3 floors of this mansion contained more rooms than Sojiro's entire apartment building. Except their size was excessive. Here, the mansion's rooms seemed too numerous for so few inhabitants. Its lavish carpeted halls cold and dreary. The guest room that Sojiro had been sleeping in was on the 2nd floor of the east wing. A staircase leading down to the 1st floor was at the end of the corridor, at the center of the mansion. Winter sunlight beamed through the windows, which only made the empty corridor appear even lonelier. The center of the mansion was topped by a vaulted skylight overlooking the 1st floor. The staircase connecting the 1st and 2nd floors lined its walls. Another staircase at the other end of the 2nd floor corridor presumably led to an attic or storeroom of sorts on the 3rd floor. Paying no mind to Sojiro's gawking, Ako descended the stairs with familiar steps. The foyer was a place of white and wood grain. Its hard wood floors shone brightly under the sunlight coming in from the ceiling. And the tall white walls were spotless and brawny. Wow, look at that. This place is very, very old money rich. There was a staircase leading to the 2nd floor, and a long, unused fireplace. A neglected telephone sat on the table, opposite a solemn grandfather clock. It was more like an old castle than a mansion. Ako shot Sojiro a callous stare, who stood captivated by an otherworldly scenery.
今はこっちよ。ぼさっとしない。
She grabbed the knob of the door next to the stairs. There were 4 doors to the foyer, and the easternmost as you entered the house led to the drawing room. The door on the opposite side of the foyer led to the mansion's west wing. To the south was the entrance. On the north side was one more door next to the fireplace. Tucked underneath the stairs, this door connected to a bathroom, unbeknownst to Sojiro. Due to the lack of windows, the 1st floor corridor were not well lit. The 2nd floor was a seldom attended infirmary, and the foyer a staircase or stairwell that in some foreign castle. In the 1st floor corridor was a windowless labyrinth, not unlike the corridors of a hotel. Whoa. Although it had not been long since Sojiro came to the city, even he could feel this place was out of the ordinary. Seeing how he was going to be stuck here for the foreseeable future, He found it hard to get excited about living in a haunted house.
そこが今で奥が厨房ね。簡単な料理ぐらいはできるようになってるから。
I know how to cook. I work at a restaurant.
今の隣にはサンルームがあるんだけど、ここが食卓の代わり。
And a abandoned amusement park. And some other jobs. Oh wait, they use a sunroom as a dining room? I talked over it by accident. Alko said, reaching for a door along the dim corridor. However, she paused before turning the knob. She flashed Sojiro a meaningful glance, which she quickly withdrew. Then, without further ado, she opened the door. Television! Sandy! She said to Alice as she entered the drawing room. After hesitating for a moment, Sojiro entered after her. Compared to the corridor, the drawing room was unexpectedly modern. The carpeted floor, leather sofas, and large 30-inch TV were more than what Sojiro had come to expect in a normal home. As expected in the 90s, TVs that size were kind of big. In this family-oriented room, a girl far removed from said settings sat quietly on the sofa. Alko sat on the sofa across from the girl in all black. This gave Sojiro two seating options. Next to Aoko Aozaki, or next to Alice Koonji. Imagine if we had a choice. That'd be funny. He's just gonna stand there. After about 2 seconds of deliberating, he decided to stand by the wall as if neither option appealed. I love this. He's like, they're both beautiful girls, but also both extremely dangerous and can kill me in any second. Alko and Alice were facing each other across a coffee table. The clean, perfectly leveled table somehow added to the austere atmosphere.
当事者も認めたことだし、これで何の問題もないわね、アリス。
Alice gave one deep nod in response to her non-question. From his position against the wall, they looked like as though they were clearing up some niggling grievances. Sojiro got the feeling that the two did not entirely see eye to eye concerning what to do with him.
そうね。原因も究明しないといけないし。
Wait, the cause? The cause of what? She cast a sideways look at Sojiro with those darkly shaded eyes of hers. Her voice shared the same cold indifference, making it abundantly clear that she had no intention of accepting him as a housemate.
けれど、あなたはそれでいいの？
I don't have a choice.
遊園地でのことを忘れてはいないでしょ?
Once again, I don't have a choice. Alice's voice was a mixture of judgment and scrutiny. She was aware that from an outsider's perspective, she and Aoko appeared dangerous. She wanted to know if Sojiro was up to the challenge of living with such people.
そりゃ夢だと思い込みたいけど、ちゃんと覚えてるし。
Oh, damn it. Wait, no, we're going back.
そりゃ夢だと思い込みたいけど、ちゃんと覚えてるし。できるだけ無事に済ませるには、これが一番無難そうだ。
Above all else, it was the only way they could let him live. Alice responded apathetically with a non-committal murmur. She silently placed a small object on the table with a clink. The bottle? Medicine bottle? No! She pulled her pale fingers away from the small glass bottle. The glass, more pale blue than transparent, was enough to signify its high quality. Memory erasing potion? With a crane-like motion, she removed the stopper. Oh, I love how they didn't show the bottle without the top. They just zoomed in to below the top, so you can assume that it's been removed. Even though this was the first time he had seen such a thing, something about it made him feel uneasy. Was it that it made him sad, or Ako's standoffish behavior only added to his concern? Alice once again fixed her eyes on Sojiro, who was bracing himself for the worst. The glint in her eyes was bewitching. With not a single emotion apparent on her face, she called his name.
しずきくん?
Oh no, his soul's in the bottle. Yeah, huh? The moment he responded to her, whispered call, his surroundings began to transform. The air grew thick, so thick it took on a color and shape. The density and discomfort that coiled around his skin made it seem like the air had become words. Ugh! Opening his mouth to gasp for air, the words invaded his lungs. Instinctively, he covered his mouth with his right hand and clutched his chest with his left. Both hands appeared clear as mud. Even the thickness of mountain fogs never seized his sense like this. If he had come up with an analogy, no words could quite describe it, but it was like he was standing in the pages of a newspaper. What does that mean? The first sense to adjust to this new sensation was his hearing. Then his breathing stabilized, yet the feeling of suffocation remained. There was nothing restraining him that he could see, but he felt an intense claustrophobia. Before he even felt shock at the sudden change, he reached out in an attempt to find an escape. But his outstretched arms found only emptiness. It seemed contradictory that a place with no walls and a wide view could feel so cramped. Spirited away in a dense fog. Back in the mountains, such superstitions never seemed real to him, until now. Yeah, he's in the bottle. And then, he finally noticed. A surprise to beat all surprises. The drawing room had not changed to another world at all. He knew this for certain because he could still see the room he was just in through the fog, as well as the two girls, Aoko Aozaki and Alice Kuonji, watching him closely. It was simply a problem of perspective. The floor was dark and perfectly flat. Looking up, there the two of them stood. The two girls were like two imposing gargantuan clouds coldly looking down at him. Remembering the structure of the room and layout of the furniture, Sojiro's unsurpassed candor finally grasped his predicament. The parade at the amusement park had nothing on this. Somehow, he was inside the glass bottle that Alice Kuonji produced only moments ago. Marveling at Alice's wickedness, Aoko glanced at the small bottle on the table.
2日前の夜と同じ状況になったわね。
Ah, darn.
今回そいつは起きてるけど。
Aoko calmly mused. Alice, however, was not looking down at the bottle. Instead, her eyes were locked on Aoko. There should be a period there since the instead is capitalized.
意外ね。青子は怒ると思ってたのに。
いや、私も似たようなこと考えてたから。少しは魔術ってもんを思い知らせておかないと困るでしょ。アリスがやってくれるなら止めはしないし、怒りもしないわ。
Not even mad.
こっちが予定していたものより何倍もめちゃくちゃだけど。
Aoko did not take her eyes off the bottle as she spoke. Although she did her best to feign indifference towards Alice's magecraft, she could not completely hide her curiosity. The figure inside the bottle, likely having been caught on to what was happening, tried various things like flailing its arms and sprinting around. The surface of the bottle was cloudy, so it was hard to make out exactly what was happening inside.
ところで、これって私にくれたやつとは別物みたいだけど。
Yeah, this one's luxurious. Yeah.
あれより作りは細かいわ。青子にあげたのは使い捨ての、隔離するだけのものよ。これはお互いの声も聞こえるから。
This one allows two-way communication.
へえ。けど、その割には何の反応もないわね。
I said it was two ways, between you and me, not between me and him.
青子には聞こえないだけよ。
Alice said calmly, finally dropping her gaze to the bottle. Just then, the figure inside stopped moving. Wow, that is a very detailed bottle. It appeared only Alice had a connection to the world inside the bottle.
なんだ、術者にしか特典はないんだ。
I wanted to torture people, come on! Aoko sighed, losing interest. Ignoring Aoko, Alice opened her mouth as if to speak to someone not altogether there.
どう？これでも一番無難だと思う。
The person she was talking to was none other than the one inside the bottle. She was, of course, referring to Sojiro's earlier comment. Wow, she has like the same like eye drawing where she's looking down. She's usually reading a book, Now she's standing up looking down at the bottle. It was her way of testing the boy who implied that living in this mansion seemed safe.
いきなり小瓶に閉じ込めて聞き返すあたり容赦ないというか、この子の洋館への執着も問題よね。
This is her house. Actually, wait. So, no, this is a different bottle. So, his soul wasn't already in the bottle. I think it just got transferred to the bottle just now after she said his name. That might be it. Then maybe? I think so. Then again, considering Aoko had invited this witness to the House of Mirrors for a fight to the death, she was in no position to criticize. She would make sure that Alice did not let her emotions get the best of her, but for now, she was content to observe as a bystander. After a moment, Alice's expressions changed. Oh, so I guess we said something, but now we're in the POV of Aoko, so we don't know the answer. She must have gotten an answer to her question. Without any way to tell what the situation was inside the bottle, Aoko had no idea what the answer was, however. Only that Alice's face was the one she had made when the boy she was talking to said what she wanted to hear.
私が言えることでもないけど。
For an instant, she glanced at Aoko. Slightly shaking her head, she reached for the small bottle.
ほんと、物好きね、しずきくんは。
Yep. Did you hear he's from the mountains? She said his name with what seemed like a forlorn frown. As soon as she removed the stopper, the air in the room quivered. The boy, who had been casting a shadow on the wall until a minute ago, now leaned against it for support again. Aoko turned around to face Sojiro right behind her, resting her elbow over the back of the sofa.
どう？気分は？
見ての通り、めちゃくちゃだ。
Sojiro answered with the unusual hostility. She's like, yeah, we can mess with you all we want. Aoko was reminded of his strange behavior, as she was sure that he would be scared or shocked, not angry.
夢で似たようなものを見てなかったら、今頃心臓が止まってたところだ。そこはついてたと思う。信じられないのは、なんでいちいち実践するかってことだ。魔術は怖いものなんだって言えば済むだろうに。それと、物騒な青崎の声、聞こえてたぞ。
物騒で悪うございました。けど、言葉じゃなくてきちんと実感してもらいたかったのは本当よ。どう？魔術ってもんを甘く見てたでしょ、宗十郎。
As much as he hated to admit it, she was right. It's such a pretty bottle. Though it was not that he had taken magecraft lightly, but merely that he couldn't understand it.
けど、実感うんぬん言われても困る。これまでの青崎の無茶っぷりと、今のわけのわからなさはとても比べられない。
そりゃそうよ。アリスと比べないでよね。アリスの魔術は私たちの中でもデタラメで、もう言葉にできないぐらい最悪なんだって言ったでしょ。
So terrible, so horrible.
失礼ね。人命を脅かすという点なら、青子の方がよっぽどひどいと思うけど。
Okay, that might be true.
それよりあなた、本当に彼を殺す気はあったの？一体どんな追い詰め方をすれば、青崎なら多分安全なんて言葉が返ってくるのかしらね。
そんなのはあったに決まってるでしょ。
I just want to have some fun first.
こいつが何て言ったか知らないけど、絶対意味違うから。こいつはね、そもそも何が危ないのかやけどするまで気づかない。っていうか、やけどしても、よし、死ななきゃ安いなんて本気で思っちゃう天然ボケなの。
Probably true.
ね、そうでしょ、宗十郎。
He had no idea why she was suddenly shouting, but he nodded anyways just to be safe. Yeah. The drawing room had become awfully noisy. Alice sat watching the two at a complete loss. Okay. I think I'm gonna stop here for now. Oh, it was a lot of, post-battle stuff. I guess, you know, the thing with Sojo got resolved. Now I had a feeling it was gonna be to this because he wasn't gonna die, but the only way that they could really make him keep him alive is by keeping an eye on him. I wasn't expecting him to actually move into the Kuonji estate though, because, well, I felt that Alice and actually I don't know about Alice, but Alko probably wouldn't have wanted that because it seems like she can't stand him. But it seems like that's what's gonna be, so we're gonna see a lot from this trio. I'm looking forward to seeing their dynamic because I really like Alko, I really like Shizuki, but so far Alice has been like a big question mark for me. I don't know whether or not to like her. She tried to kill, oh, I'm gonna say us, but like most of the game is through Alko and Shizuki's point of view. But she's also, I guess from their point of view, they're just keeping up the rules to make sure that the mages can remain mages because biggest taboo is getting the secret out, I guess. But it seems like they reached a compromise. She's shown who wears the pants in this household. It's definitely Alice. And well, Sojiro's still alive, and that's what matters. But we'll see this dynamic more next time. Until then, I will be seeing you. See ya!